Hello and welcome to Dun & Bradstreet's webinar, the Dun & Bradstreet and Forrester Total Economic Impact Report. My name is Nicole Henry and I am your host for today's webinar. Before we dive into today's webinar, I'd like to review some housekeeping items. During today's presentation, we invite you to submit any questions you may have using the Ask Questions Here box. Our webinar is scheduled to run for approximately 1 hour, and we will have time at the end to take any questions that you might have. We are recording this session and we will make it available to all participants post-webinar. Without further ado, I will now hand it off to today's presenters to introduce themselves. Chris?
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to share how Dun & Bradstreet is improving our clients' business performance through the use of our master data solutions and how our clients think about ROI and value as it relates to justifying the required capabilities for their master data programs. My name is Chris Lucas. I am the Vice President of Data Management Solutions for Dun & Bradstreet. Spent the better part of the last 20 years helping companies better leverage data to drive improved decisions and profitable growth. My co-host today, Mark Loretano from Forrester, will talk about a study we engaged them in to help us and you understand how some of the world's leading companies think about value and ROI for master data solutions. We chose Forrester to partner with because they have an established, well-recognized framework and approach to this called Total Economic Impact. Today, Mark will lead us through the results of working with 5 D&B customers. Our hope is that by sharing their approach and results, we can help each of you better articulate the need and value, providing justification for the program and required capabilities. In this case, specifically, D&B Master Data Solutions. It is our goal that you will leave here today with 3 things. First, an understanding that the challenges you face to try and turn raw data into insights and actions is common. You're not alone in that challenge. That D&B provides master data solutions that are helping companies like yours overcome this challenge. And lastly, that there's real economic benefit that can be quantified to help you understand and articulate the impact of effective master data solutions, enabling you to get the required funding for your program. So I'm going to kick it off with an introduction and provide some background and context to the challenge we all face and how D&B is helping companies overcome this challenge. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to walk us through what is TEI and provide an overview of the TEI approach and methodology, followed by an executive summary where he'll share high-level findings across the companies he interviewed. We'll then move to the customer journey, where Mark will review specific use cases, needs, required capabilities, and results, followed by the actual study results themselves, quantifying the impact of the investment these companies made in their D&B master data solutions, and then we'll close with some Q&A. So let's get started. So in our daily lives, it feels like everything we touch today turns to data. It's overwhelming. What was manual is now automated. What was analog is now digital, and data's behind it all. Here are a couple interesting realities to consider. The first is data is growing so fast that we've arguably lost the ability to even measure the rate of increase. And secondly, not all data is true. Not all true data is true simultaneously. More and more, data contains bias that can subtly or dramatically impact business decisions. There's more and more data flowing into your data ecosystem, most of it gathering in disparate, unconnected silos that only work independently. It might seem like you have lost control of all of this data. You're unable to develop the data-derived insights you need to fully understand your business relationships. How do you connect deal origination set up by the customer over the web with provisioning by the services team to finance who's trying to recognize revenue? We've all done it. We do it by hand with all the bias and issues caused by humans trying to make sense of the data, resulting in no common version of truth. What should be creating fabulous insights is actually in some cases creating a lot of chaos. The resulting outcome of data chaos has been that multiple departments, regions, and channels have needed to create and manage their own data to keep their end of the business running. This results in multiple instances of CRMs, marketing systems, etc., and in workflows with differing definitions and a lack of cross-functional standards. When everyone does their own thing, you lose sight of the bigger picture, delivering a great user experience and capturing market share. There's no common version of truth, and executives are left wondering how many customers, suppliers, or other key business partners they actually have. Even in large organizations with ERP and other centralized services, there are disconnected applications, different opinions on good enough for certain processes, and many other sources of variation. It is not uncommon for large organizations to have dozens of versions of the truth for basic things like segmentation and account roll-up. Couple this phenomenon with the federation of data science capabilities, where various parts of the organization can acquire open source tools and capabilities, and you have the ability to create even more disparate and self-informing silos of data. How do you find truth among all these data silos? If you start by establishing a common view of your customers, vendors, and business counterparties across your organization, you begin to transform these silos into connected systems. You take control of your data. Master data is the solution that brings interoperability to and clarity across your data universe. Imagine you have access to a capability which could create a common language across all your disparate systems, enabling you to connect and decipher the information about your key business relationships, much like the Rosetta Stone helps decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics. Think of the insight you could gain from this virtual connector. That's what Dun & Bradstreet Master Data Solutions does better than anybody. It creates a common foundational language across all your data silos, giving you visibility into and an understanding of your business relationships. Examples include definition of a customer, a location, or an industry. And you could take advantage of it no matter where you are in your data journey. If our goal is to create great client experiences, then at every point in the customer lifecycle, we have to have an accurate, common knowledge of that business. Without it, we run the risk of selling to customers as if they are prospects, servicing high-value customers as if they were low-value customers, upselling a customer that's already at risk of not paying. All these scenarios are real and can be avoided with master data. Secondly, in this time of economic uncertainty, more and more companies are bringing the risk dimension into their sales and marketing plans. Having a common view of the business, industries, and geographies most affected by COVID-19 should alter your plans in terms of who you pursue from a marketing, collections, and supplier perspective. Regaining revenue confidence requires a different look at the buyer journey beyond the purchase phase. Organizations must factor in the risk profile of the account, how it impacts the overall portfolio, cash and collections, and policy decisions. Ultimately, this will ensure organizations can retain and grow customers that are most profitable. Again, not possible without a master view of opportunity and risk, and D&B is uniquely positioned to help in this area, aided by our recently released COVID Index. D&B helps clients manage and transform their data into actionable insights. We can ingest data from any source, whether it be a CRM, ERP, or simply a file, and allow clients to clean, enrich, manage, steward, and monitor their data to ensure it is optimized for its intended use. Once optimized, we can also provide integrations with specific CRM, ERP, marketing automation, and customer data platforms, allowing customers to activate campaigns and programs with this data. Because as we all knew, until that master data is put in motion, it's not really delivering any value. Optimize and activate should be our collective mantra. Today, we all know the value and power of data. Data is a driver of growth, retention, and profitability, and a significant competitive advantage for companies that understand how to leverage it. According to McKinsey's Global Institute, data-driven companies are 23 times more likely to acquire customers than their peers who are not data-driven. 6 times more likely to retain, and 19 times more profitable. So clearly harnessing the power of data and insights improves business performance and drives growth. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who's going to walk us through the study that Forrester did for us and the results. So Mark?
Thank you, Chris. So Forrester's Total Economic Impact team has a long history of helping companies quantify the benefits of the technologies that they offer. I led the Total Economic Impact study on the Master Data Solutions study, and I'm happy to be here today to talk with you about the findings. To help put the study's findings in context, we'll kick things off with an introduction of the TEI. Forrester regularly surveys IT decision makers, and in our last survey, over 90% found value in business case justifications for technology investments. The TEI is an effective framework because it can be applied in a lot of different situations, and it also incorporates risk or uncertainty as well as strategic impacts. Chris, did you have a question here about the
Yeah, I did.
Can be
Mark,
applied?
just wanted to ask you to kind of clarify, because the headline sort of talks about technology, and we know the study incorporates both technology and data related investments and benefits. So if you could just talk a little bit about how that's included in this.
Sure. Well, Chris, as I know you're well aware, and your customers, that data is really like the new oil. It's not only due to its value as a resource, but master data plays a key role in providing fluidity to data management, making that data usable for analysis. So in a way, master data really affects how well a lot of your other technological investments are operating. And we'll get into that as we dive into some of the findings from the study.
Great clarification.
Thanks. So the TEI consists of 4 main areas. We look at benefits and costs. This is fairly straightforward. Costs are things like licensing costs or implementation costs. Benefits are the impact on the business. We also look at the flexibility of a product to capture unquantified benefits and benefits for the future. We view all of these through the lens of risk. So we risk adjust every category to arrive at a total economic impact. Our TEI studies are based upon a multi-step approach. We started with some due diligence. We gathered some expertise internally at Forrester, looping in our analysts, and we spoke to subject matter experts at D&B. We then spoke to 5 different customers who are using Master Data Solutions today. We do this to really understand what the customer's experience has been. We're able to ask them directly, what kind of benefits have you seen? And what have you gotten out of this investment? What I'd like to do now is just walk you through the highlights from the study. Forrester interviewed, as you mentioned, 5 companies, but they're from a fairly diverse set of industries. Most operate on a global basis, and they relied upon comprehensive databases to guide business decisions and planning across a broad set of use cases for master data. So, key results. Quantified benefits outlined by the interviewees included improvements in sales and management and sales and marketing, both in terms of acquiring new accounts and more efficient operations, greater productivity in supplier management. You can see that in the second bullet there, or the third bullet, and and the conservation of resources needed for data management. So these are all important KPIs. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just the question as you talked about, and it's really on the notion of KPIs, because I know it's something that many organizations struggle with, and when you bring in the notion of improvement, it sort of assumes that you have a KPI measurement, some kind of a baseline. What's been your experience with working with the companies you work with? Do most have that baseline readily available? And if not, what are some best practices and things that you might recommend companies use to make sure they know what that baseline is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always much easier, to establish a strong business case when you have a firm grasp on your current performance. So for those that haven't done it yet, my advice is to start as early as possible, gather information from direct users, working with the product, in this case, Master Data Solutions, as well as your internal customers downstream in the organization that are utilizing, the services that you're providing with Master Data. So in the short term, if you need to try to quantify benefits, I'd really suggest you take a closer look at the TEI study, because from that study, you have some benchmarks that you could apply to your own business in terms of the size of your business, the number of customers that you have, and that can be a good starting point for an analysis. But simultaneously, it's always a good idea to gather these KPIs so you can have a more concrete understanding.
Great, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, it did. Perfect. I think that the notion of bringing into external benchmarks in addition to any internal information you have, I think is a great add.
Good. Okay, the following customer quote illustrates how businesses are using Master Data Solutions to better serve existing customers and identify opportunities to develop more expansive relationships. In this case, the customer told us many vendors don't have the depth of information that Dun & Bradstreet has and will stop at the legal entity level. When you're doing master data, you're not just worried about the corporate headquarters. We need to know the actual locations of all of our customer sites. You can find more quotes like this in the full study. So here are the key takeaways from the study, and they're all in terms of a 3-year impact. Composite organization, based upon the customers interviewed, experienced a 173% return on investment, total benefits of $7.7 million, a net present value of $4.9 million, and a payback of less than 3 months. At this point, I want to just kind of walk you through the customer journey that we heard from those that we interviewed. Prior challenges included things like, some of the key catalysts that were driving the investment in Master Data Solutions included, frustrations over inaccurate reporting, prolonged decision-making, and limited access to critical business data. And these are pretty common across the board. As a result, the organizations were seeking a solution with depth and breadth of coverage, but also a partner with the expertise to help them streamline their master data management practices. Key results that were shared with us from the investment that these companies made speak to the fact that they were able to increase the data fluidity and downstream benefits of Master Data Solutions, faster time to value, improved speed and efficiency of enterprise workflows.
Mark, just one comment on that last slide is just more of an observation, having been in this business for a while. is that to get to the true ROI, and I think this is a great representation of that, you really have to follow all the data all the way down to the end user and consumption area. So while the data professionals might garner some benefit and value from operational efficiencies and things like that, much of the benefit is derived based on the improved decision-making downstream. And in almost always case, it's some combination of operational efficiency plus either some increase in revenue or reduction in risk that truly cements the value proposition for this. So for the practitioners kind of on the phone, ensuring that you understand all the people downstream that are using the data and make sure that both their costs and their benefits are included in an analysis like this is really key. And I think this is a great representation of that, Mark, so thank you.
Yeah, it really does. It makes the business case come alive. Okay, so based on conversations with the customers, Forrester created what we call a composite organization. And the composite reflects a combination of the experiences of the 5 companies that were interviewed. This composite organization forms the basis for the financial analysis. Essentially, it's a tool for us to discuss the benefits as well as the costs experienced by Master Data Solutions customers. And these are the characteristics that we developed for this composite organization, and that readers of the study can try to insert some of their own characteristics in place of these. So this is the basis for the framework. Now we'll take a closer look at what we found with this composite organization. The composite had 6 quantifiable benefits that we grouped under 4 headings. You can see here, I'll go through the details on the 4 benefit categories in turn and explain how we modeled these. The 4 areas were sales and marketing, supplier management, credit management, and reduction in data QA headcount. Okay, looking at sales and marketing, the models under this category focused on 2 areas: incremental income from new sales, as well as improvements in sales and operations. For the incremental income, the model was based on a white space analysis that generated 100 new customer account relationships. For the sales and operations model, it was derived primarily from eliminating 37,500 bad records. So those were sort of key assumptions that went into the calculation. In the case of bad records, we applied a cost for correcting those bad records, and also how that impacts the other decisions within the organization. And in the case of incremental income, we applied a profit margin to the income generated by new customer accounts. The total benefit impact, again, over 3 years, the present value of that impact was $5.5 million. For supplier management, the model was driven by a key fact shared with us, an 80% improvement in supplier management productivity. It's also clearly a function of the size of the team overseeing supplier management. And in this case, we've made an assumption about the percentage of that improvement that's attributed to Dun & Bradstreet and captured by the organization. For credit management, this department actually leveraged the credit analytics in Master Data Solutions to increase their hands-off approval rate. As a result, their productivity improved by 50%, resulting in a 3-year overall impact of about $500,000. Foundational data was modeled in two areas. First, we looked at the impact from an actual reduction in QA headcount, and then also looking at cost avoidance related to duplicate records. In the case of the QA headcount, there was a 50% reduction in employees, and this was part of a larger effort to incorporate master data into their master data management system. Overall, for the composite organization, we've attributed 25% of that benefit to Dun & Bradstreet Master Data Solutions. And for the cost of avoidance of duplicate records, the organization is involved in mergers and acquisition activity, and they found that they were able to avoid introducing 20,000 duplicate records into their customer management system, and we estimated an impact of that based on the cost of eliminating those records at $10 a record. So the overall impact, again, over 3 years was $1.1 million. In terms of benefits that were more intangible, interviewees shared that they were able to make critical business decisions with greater confidence, and that they valued the partnership relationship with D&B and their deep expertise in master data solutions and applications. We described these in more depth in the actual report, but these were key findings. We also looked at costs. Customers broke costs down into 2 categories. Their licensing costs of about $2.6 million. Again, these are over 3 years. And implementation costs, in this case, just over $200,000. TEIs include flexibility as well as risk factors. Here, flexibility speaks to benefits customers plan to realize in the near future. Many customers spoke about the fact that the DUNS number actually helps to facilitate future investments in data and data resources from other partners, because they can all link these additional future purchases to that DUNS number and add a more complete picture of their customers as a result. We also looked at risks. These risks were taken into account both in terms of our assumptions about the overall impact of a benefit and also regarding the implementation of the solution. So things that impact the overall benefit fall into things such as the degree to which the company is committed to a master data solution, and also what the prior state is, again, establishing these benchmarks of what your performance is in a variety of areas. So as a result, we add a risk factor that decreases the value of the benefit depending upon the variability in some of the key assumptions for each model. And the same thing is true for implementation. So in summary, again, financial results, we saw a 173% return on investment, 4.9 million net present value. As you can see, the initial costs are relatively low in comparison to the annual costs, and the benefits are fairly steady over the period that we looked at. Again, key summary statistics, in fact, that the payback was less than 3 months is impressive. At this point, I'd like to turn things back over to Chris.
Yeah, Mark, before I jump on, just had a comment. I wasn't quite quick enough to hit the unmute button earlier, but I think two things I wanted to just comment on. I think the first was you had a slide which talked about some qualitative benefits. And I think it's important to note that as much as we would like to be able to quantify everything, in many cases, some of them are either impossible or just really, really hard to quantify, but they shouldn't be left out of the value proposition. Because even though they might be discounted, they might be risk adjusted to some degree. I do think calling out things you can't benefit that you believe are truly valuable should be part of that business case. And the second comment was, as you kind of break down the benefits between, I'll just say, efficiencies and cost improvements versus top line gains, people are much more ready to believe the cost savings because they feel like you have a little bit more control over that. I know in my experience when the business case starts to include revenue in it, you get a lot of doubting Thomases out there who will question if that's going to actually happen. And in many ways, your sort of risk adjustment, Mark, and that sort of taking that into consideration, I think for me was a great kind of learning to how to build these things more effectively, because I know that's the first number somebody looks at and kind of scrutinizes. And if you can tell the story where you've already included some sort of risk dimension to that, I think you kind of disarm the conversation early. So I think that's a really great dimension.
Thanks.
So let me get up to our slide. So thanks, Mark. Great stuff. It's an area that many times overlooked or taken for granted. Building a business case and justifying the investment is a learned skill. We at D&B are fortunate to have some great customers that are willing to share some of this sensitive information in an effort to help others. These are proud business folks that are having a positive impact on their business using D&B Master Data Solutions as the foundation of their program, where the primary use case is focused on improving sales, marketing, finance, compliance, or some combination of these. We know we can help you, just as we have helped these 5 companies. So to recap, data management is a journey, not a sprint. Take a phased approach. Although difficult to see in the beginning, there is real ROI in accurate quality data. Utilize real ROI case examples to help solidify internal buy-in. And lastly, not all data management projects and vendors are created equal. You can realize your time to value of your investment in less than 3 months with D&B Master Data Solutions. So in closing, really appreciate you joining us today. Hope you came away with a few nuggets that you can use to help justify and support the projects you're working on. 2 last thoughts before I turn it over to Nicole to open up the Q&A. First is each of you will receive a copy of the TEI report, which has significantly more detail than we're able to share on this webinar today. And hopefully you find it valuable as you begin to build your own business case and justifications. And secondly, if you want to have an objective third-party view on the baseline quality of your data and D&B's view on opportunities to improve, please take us up on our offer for a free data health scan by following the link provided to you post this session. We talked earlier about people knowing their baselines, and I think understanding where you are is an absolutely critical first step to make sure you have a plan that gets you where you need to go. And for many companies, we provide an unbiased baseline of where your journey's starting and some realistic expectations of where you can get. So hopefully you'll take us up on those offers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to open up the Q&A. Nicole?
Thanks, Chris. Really great presentation. It was there were some really great nuggets on how to validate and quantify the power of data insights. So thank you, Chris and Mark, for a great presentation. So just as a reminder, you can submit your questions in the Ask Questions Here box, as I mentioned at the start of today's webinar. So with that said, let's dive into some of the questions that we received. First question, can you explain again why Forrester makes risk adjustment to benefits? I think that question is for you, Mark.
Sure. I think we might all agree that there's risk inherent in any technology or data project. And in an effort to present reasonable, achievable, and credible benefits and ROI totals, Forrester makes it a practice of risk adjusting benefits downward. The risk adjustment benefits still produce an ROI, in this case, of 173%. So it's a very compelling business case that raises the confidence of the investment is likely to succeed because the risks that threaten the project have been taken into consideration and quantified. The risk-adjusted numbers should be taken as realistic expectations for an investment in Dun & Bradstreet Master Data Solutions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Moving on to the next question. How can I use the case study to determine what my costs and benefits, as well as ROI, might be if my company invested in Dun & Bradstreet Master Data Solutions? So I think this question can actually be for both of you, but maybe let's turn it over to Mark and then Chris can follow.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, I think the TEI study has a lot more detail than what was presented here today, and it's really a good starting point for beginning to answer the question, how do you create your own business case and form your own conclusions about investing in Dun & Bradstreet solutions? So it certainly should help to stimulate some ideas and ways that you can look at your organization and begin to quantify those costs and benefits.
Yeah, and this is Chris. I would add, and I think anyone on the call who'd be interested in taking us up on that offer, we certainly have the ability to customize what that ROI formula looks like. So we have the benefit of just recently completed this project with Forrester, which is going to give us sort of an quote-unquote ROI calculator and approach. But we also have our own sort of ROI calculator and approach. And we think it's great to sort of have a third party provide an additional validation to some of the things that we're doing. And our commitment to who's ever interested is we'd work with you leveraging some combination of the assets of Forrester and the assets of Dun & Bradstreet to help you put together the best ROI and business case.
Great. Next question. Can you please provide more context around how Dun & Bradstreet partners with clients to help scope master data projects? Chris, I think that this one's for you specifically.
Yeah, well, I think we're really fortunate to have a group of very seasoned sellers and consultants in the field who spend an awful lot of time up front in the process doing the diligence to try and understand first is, what are the goals and the objectives? No one wants to do and embark on a master data initiative for the sake of master data, but truly understanding what the goals are and then working with the customer and what will sound like a familiar, sort of mantra is establishing what are the baselines, where are the areas where you're sufficient to go after that new initiative, and where are the areas that you're deficient. And with that, we would help and work with the customer to create a phased roadmap. I think it's really important in all of these master data initiatives that you get some quick wins and figure out what that journey looks like. So depending upon where you are in the journey, from the very beginning to you're halfway there, we'd be able to sort of first understand where you are and help you plot a course to where you're going based on our collective experience of working with, hundreds of great customers who've been on a similar journey. And that might be kind of the biggest takeaway is we've done this before and seen this movie before, and our customers benefit from that.
Thank you, Chris. Next question is, what is the average investment required to implement an MDM solution? And I think you could answer this two ways. There is a difference between investment in an MDM software solution versus a master data solution. So, Chris, I'll let you further expand on that.
It's going to be the worst answer ever, and that is it depends, right? And we talked about this notion of a journey and a level of maturity. It could be anywhere from, tens of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. At the highest end, it's usually an enterprise initiative covering multiple regions and departments and business units. It includes master data technology. It includes governance teams, creation of policy and data stewards, all necessary to get the benefit that an enterprise approach to MDM can provide a company. But that's not always required to get to where you're going. And we see more and more companies taking a more micro approach to that and really focusing on mastering an ecosystem. We see a lot of energy and effort in the sales and marketing systems where they're trying to master their data specific to the CRM, the website, and the marketing automation. And across those three platforms, if you can have a common language, you can actually get into that on a relatively low cost number and build as you go. So, Nicole, I can't quote an exact number, but it's,
right.
It's probably no less than tens of thousands of dollars. And, all the way up as high as you could imagine.
Right. I think it's all about your business need, right? And
yep.
And taking that phased approach, right? You don't have, it's not, as you had mentioned in the key takeaway slide, it's not.
And really kind of became a significant player in the market. Those initial implementations were wrought with failure because they were trying to do the big bang approach, and whether it's master data, ERP, or anything, those massive technology projects are super, super risky and in many times fail to deliver the business benefit and don't ever see the light of day. So I think we're all a little bit smarter now in taking that phased approach, identifying those quick wins so that we can, progress along the way and show value as we're increasing our spend.
Thank you. That's a great summary. I believe this is our last question, and it's quite tactical, but it's a useful question. How can I access the full Forrester TEI report? And I can answer that. We will be sending an email on Monday to all participants with the full report. So stay tuned on that. It will be in your inbox on Monday. Okay. Well, with that said, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, including our wonderful presenters, Chris and Mark. Thank you again. And to everyone who took the time out of their busy day to join, have a wonderful rest of the week, and stay tuned on the recording as well as the full report coming to you soon within the next few days. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.